he mea tau kia tātou e hara mai e hui mai tēnei rā whakahirea i ki te mono o toi hei whaka mahi tēnei rā o tēnei rā i ua tātou i raro i te kaupapa o mai te wai ko e tēnei tuaki nei mea koutou he uri ahau no te whānau apuri mai tai whakatohia, engari e nonga nau i waingangia nā te rangi Wilhi, o tāne, tāna nui, i roto i te poku o taho te waime mea peke hao o te awa hai tira. O reira, tēnā rata. Sure everyone, before I started, I wanted to, we all know Anton, he's just speaking today, he's here to Tautoko. He's also an independent hearing commissioner who I actually look up to. He's got way more experience than me, and so yeah, so young road. And so yeah, just to go over what we're going to talk about, I've sort of highlighted some of the points. So on the left side is sort of all the legal stuff, and we'll go through all of that. But I think the bit that's going to be interesting is the stuff on the side is just talking about how one as a role as a commissioner, and we're considered Māori commissioners, so our role therefore is to be the editor with everyone. And so I really want to get into that's probably the discussion. I really wanted to have a discussion around that rather than me sitting in the bar, but rather us share some of our experiences, because I'm sure we've all been to hearings. I'm sure we've all got good experiences and not so good experiences, which I think we learned from that. We're the same. We've had good ones and some good ones. But my first question is, Jim, who in here is a certified commissioner? Cool. Oh wait, so apply or just pull who's in as close as he can. Awesome. So we'll just keep rolling. Oh, so just talking about how did I become a commissioner. So just my story. I usual story, dropped out of school 15, no qualifications. Met my tāne when I was 16, by 19 we had kids, we were adult and all the rest of it. By early 20s, we still sort of shoots, we better get our eights together, you know, our kids are getting a bit older. So we both went to university and to study, but before we could go to uni I had to do the bridging programs. And there was one here at Wairiki that was an environmental science program. I've always been into the whenua sort of. So as I was saying, from the coast I grew up in Kainaro and here in Rotorua, and so we used to travel home a lot when I was a kid, and so the cars didn't drive so fast back then, so we spent a lot of time driving and looking out the window, and you know, in the middle of Kainaro forest, all you see is trees, and so you sort of start wondering how come that motor's there, how come that owl's over there, and I used to wonder that a lot as a kid, so I was quite drawn to this environmental science program. And so within that program we had a week worth of RMA training, and the fellow that was teaching us there, he took us over to Waikato, and we went to watch a hearing, and the hearing that was on was the Waikato River water intake hearing, where they were looking to take water from the awa to supply the city. And there was the hapu that had mana whenua there, and well, they were giving their kōrero, and at that time we're talking like 95. So the RMA was only about 4 years old, and the whole panel of commissioners, they were all councillors back then, there was no commissioners back then. All councillors, Pākete katoa, and most of the time, you know, old fellas. And as the whānau that are Piko Mātua that were there were giving the kōrero, you could see it was really pohonu their kōrero. What they were trying to point out to these fellows was that the place that was being proposed was where they used to wash their tūpāpaku. And what they were trying to say is this is not a safe place to do this. You know, Wairua, it's not safe for people spiritually to be taking water from the spot to supply the city. And you know, and there was tangi, everything, you know, it was full party listening to kōrero. And I looked over at the panel and you could see that all switched off. All he said that glazed over it, and all this kōrero straight over their heads, and I remember that was the point where I thought, I'm going to sit on that side of the table one day. And so I'm really buzzed. That was my driver. That's what I wanted to do this one. Yes. So this is the stuff I've taken straight off the MFE website, so it's really wordy, so I won't go through it very much, but it talks about the different sections in the Act that supports the role of commissioners. So basically, why do you bring a commissioner? Well, they're brought in to help council delegate their decision-making authority to a commissioner to make decisions that normally they would make. And in a lot of circumstances, there's a lot of circumstances in which that will occur. What we're finding in recent times is that that's becoming a trend throughout the country, throughout all councils, regional and district, is that independent commissioners are now being brought in to remove the perception of conflict between councillors. And I think it's correct because you've got councillors who usually are making decisions on plans. They basically decide if a plan is going to be approved or not, and then they get to sit on there and adjudicating decisions of the plan, which is such profit. It's not, and it doesn't happen at national level. You know, you don't get you get politicians making policies, but yes, the law. The law will make the law, but the decisions are made by another body. You know, so you get clear separation of those purposes. And so it's starting to now happen at the regional and district council level, which I think is really important for people's belief in the process. So this is just a list of different decisions that commissioners can make. I think probably the one that we're all used to is plans and policy statements and resource consents. So here it says the ones that bring out the take mostly. I mean, anything anyone else on that? I will just go through this because I really want to get to the interesting bit. So these are just listing different circumstances where commissioners are used, but as I said, it's becoming very much the trend to fully use commissioners throughout Porto. And we'll put it all, and all of the stuff will be on the download. So yeah, I don't really want to rely on too much on this, but there's a few links that talk about LGA and environmental requirements around that. I'll carry on. My question so these are the instances when it's when a mining commission is ordered and just a point, mining commissioners if submit a request that a mining commissioner is on a panel, then you'll get one. If you don't see, you won't. So just a little hint, request one in your submission. Really important. So there's just some of the examples that you brought in, but stuff we're all familiar with, you know, Awa, roaming, take, large scale resource consent, infrastructure consent, stuff we're all really used to. And again, just talks a little bit more in detail. Now there's specific details around tourism. It's like, I don't know that we have their own books here. And then, of course, we were talking about culturally significant resources like our Lomoa, Marako, and then some of the proposals that we in these specific our Hāwitanga, there's particular proposals that have a huge effect on the Lomoa. So there, again, is commissions on those tables is really great. So there's just some good practice stuff, which I mentioned. It's quite transparency and accountability to have commissioners on board. So how do you get to B1? So there's this Making Good Decisions program that's at the moment is contracted to Opus Consultants. They basically deliver the program on behalf of MFE, Ministry for the Environment. This sort of sets out some of the what's involved in this program and what they teach. And this talks about how to be certified. So on this there's a link that takes you to their website and it talks about the process of becoming a certified independent commissioner. So in terms of that process, basically you apply, you have to do a pre-course assignment. You often do that, submit, then you do a 2-day course, and then you do a post-course assignment. and it's quite challenging. It's quite a challenging course. You know, even with my planning background, I found it really challenging, and something to sort of encourage the councils to do is support the people that they're supporting to do these things. You know, even if it's providing a room where those in your area can hang out and do your assignments together, tapping on the local planners to get some of their expertise. I know for a fact that that's what the councillors do, so you know, it's good enough for them, it's good enough for us. So yeah, in supporting, you know, if their councils want Māori independent commissioners, then they need to actually step up and sort of to get these tools, because it's not cheap, and if you miss out, back to the drawing board and there's $2.5 grand, you know. So you know, take it, make sure you've got good support around you to get through that process, and knock on the council's door and ask for that support. Find out mutual mates in the area that are doing the program to develop a support group. Save you some gas getting to the Louis too. You know, and we like working there as well. Your first certification lasts for 2 years, and then you have to recertify. And then after you recertify, that one lasts for 5 years. So I just wanted to point out that the Auckland Regional Council I think they're the only council in Wellington that have a sponsorship program, a youth sponsorship program, and that's how I got my commissioner and my recertification eventually. So yeah, don't be shy to ask it again. You know, they can only say no. You're involved. But what I think is really awesome is as long as you're supported by your hapu or your iwi, they're all coachable and can provide, you front up the PTA yourself, but if you successfully pass, they'll reimburse you up to $2.5K. So, and it's a really successful program. Nearly everybody I know in this work has utilised this to get their commission paid. So I just wanted to give the props to the regional council. Yeah, they're the ones that I know of that do this, and so you might say this and that about them, but they're actually a lot better than some of the ones that deal with other places. And they're only the only council that have Māori councillors in the whole council. So this just talks about the selection criteria, but the key one is that you've got a track record in the RMA game, whether it's because you're a kaitiaki, with Russ kaitiaki for your hapu or your iwi, you're always going to the meetings and you're always jumping up and down and whatever, because you've got a passion for the taio. That's number one. You have a passion for the taio, and then if you have the benefit of getting some training and getting better, and then if you want your people behind you supporting you, well, that's so just I noticed the one just closed. So the next round opens next year. Probably next year, right? Yeah. So, but just keep an eye on their website, on the Māori policy page. They have those dates there available. And so this is what I wanted to get to. So sorry if we powered through that, but yeah, I think this is the interesting part. So, as a commissioner, got anything to add to that?
I have a couple of things. Does anyone aspire to be a commissioner?
Yes.
We've got 2 people, 3. Let's ask the same question at the end, and everyone puts their hand up. I want to be a commissioner. Being a Māori commissioner is more than being a commissioner. So everyone who does the training and gets your certification, you are qualified to be a commissioner on whatever area. You have the qualifications. But when you're a Māori commissioner, you're an extra special commissioner, because not only can you sit on any commission as a commissioner, you know the decision-making process, but then you bring something different that someone else doesn't get, and it's a Māori perspective. So that's what we're talking about today, being a Māori commissioner, more than just a commissioner. And so that role is a really tough role, because you're impartial. So you would bring all of your own knowledge and understanding and perspectives, and sometimes they have to be parked, because you just want everyone to have their say, and you don't want to be going, yes, you're right, because you're the tapu whenua. You've got to hear everybody's evidence, and sometimes that's really, really hard, and sometimes it's extremely uncomfortable, especially if you've got a very, very onto it lawyer sitting across, and they target you and they go, I want you on board. especially like might be a Māori lawyer, and they immediately think that you're their friend, and they may go, Antoine, oh sorry, Mr. Coffin, trying to build friendships, all those kind of silly games that lawyers do, they'll try and catch you out. So that's all part of the fun, I suppose. There's a fun element to being a commissioner because it's a challenge, it can be hard. But the thing that I really enjoy about being a commissioner is the intellectual challenge. You have to read a lot of stuff, and you need to know everything about it, and then make a coherent decision at the end of it. You have to write one. You can't just say, yes, I read good, someone go and write it up. No, you've got to write it up. So it's a real challenging, but very, very rewarding, especially if you're part of something that's really big and you can drive past it with your kids and go, oh, I made the decision on that. So if it's a road, it's mediocre, but if it's something really, really lovely, then you can be proud of the decision. And also conversely, if you say no, you can be in a lonely place. So as a Māori commissioner, you might be in a position where you actually say, well, actually, I don't think this is the right place, or I don't think this stacks up. And the rest of your mates, your commissioners, go, yep, we think it is. And then you're in that lonely position, and then you still have to write up the decision together. What's called a dissenting view. And so, us as Māori, we're used to being on our own, feeling a little bit uncomfortable. And so this is just the next step on very uncomfortable, but it's a very rewarding and very important part of democracy in New Zealand. And conflicts of interest, I find in New Zealand are quite bizarre. For Māori, I think there's a double standard, that's my opinion. If you belong to an iwi, you're immediately said, if anything is associated with that iwi, you have a conflict of interest. But for everybody else, is it my brother, sister, parents, or my kids? And it stops there. But if it was your third cousin, no conflict of interest. If it was your fifth cousin, no conflict of interest. If it was sixth, seventh. So everyone else has this particular standard about association. And when you're Māori, all you fellas are the same. So I think in New Zealand, and I might continue to challenge this. Just because someone belongs to that same iwi that is involved in the hearing doesn't necessarily mean they've got a conflict of interest.
Anton,
It should be the same with everyone.
just a quick follow-up to Jeff's question.
Yeah.
You used the word my commissioner, and then there are commissioners with an understanding of things Māori. Okay, and you know, I guess the second category is more about, in some ways, some of my best friends are Māori, therefore I know what things Māori connects to. How often do you encounter that?
All the time. That's why me and Gina, we really support Māori to become Māori commissioners, rather than a commissioner who happens to be Māori puts themselves up in this. So, like myself and Gina, we help councils find Māori commissioners, and we often have lots of people saying, oh, I found out that I belong to such and such an area, I worked on a resource consent that had consultation, therefore I'm a Māori commissioner. That doesn't sound hard. So we want people who've got a background working in Māori resource management, who bring a particular skill and expertise, and then become commissioners. So that's your Māori commissioner. On the conflicts of interest, at the core of it is a financial benefit, if you're going to financially benefit from a particular decision, and then where you get an advantage. So if it's a family member, they're getting an advantage. You belong to a trust that's going to have an advantage, that's a conflict of interest. But in New Zealand, we have this particular thing it's called the perception of a conflict of interest. I find it bizarre because we're living on 3 islands, a bunch of islands. We don't have very many people, and there's going to be a perception of conflict. I think we've taken it too far, but it's the rules. So there's a perception, someone thinks that you had a conflict of interest, then it's very likely that you'll get, you won't be able to go on the panel. Well, Jeff?
Oh, wait. We will be having some questions and answers session just towards the end, and I'm sure Gina wants to.
Oh, I'm into the whole flow. You know, I'd rather be a discussion. So no, just to start, we're looking at writing good submissions. So as a commissioner, and actually that's a good point. You know, I sort of bring that up a little bit about I'm a Māori commissioner, but actually we've got to do the same course as everybody else, ask the same thing. So you know, how come we've got this little Māori in the brackets thing going on? But and then it does make people think, oh, there's a difference. It's not the same conflict. Yeah. But yeah, writing good submissions. It is really key to be able to be a good Māori commissioner. Is you're as good as what the submissions that are given. So So you might know what's going on because the whānau's telling you, or you've seen it on the news, or you know the cousins are having a kōrero when you ate the last tangi. But you can't take that to the table. You've got to go, you know, without compromise and any of that. So that would be my number one thing to you whānau if you're making submissions. Spell it out clear. Had one instance where I was really trying my hardest to get the whānau to point out that there was a waihi tapu on that particular site, and it made all the difference. But because there was that whole, we don't tell people, and you know, there's that balance. I'm not saying you've got to tell everyone where your waihi tapu is, but if you had just said yes without saying where, it would have made all the difference to what we could have done. So you know, spell it out, give us the ammunition we need. Us who can't, we know good. I don't know how many times I've heard, oh, that fella, he was useless, run around. Well, let's see your submission. That was useless. That would be my number one take home. Yeah. Right, good submissions. Unfortunately, we find ourselves still in the place where sometimes we've got to back up our kōrero with the science. I sort of thought those days were over, but I had a recent hearing where that wasn't the case, and it was basically after they had provided an ecological report, we could have taken that into account. But it happens, so if you can see like what Kane and them are doing, that's sites, that's Western sites, and in that respect that would stand up in court. So if you had the whānau out there doing data gathering, you know, collecting data in such a scientific methodological way, you know, with that Mātauranga overlay, that's a stop, and that would just sit strong in court. So, you know, get the whānau out monitoring. So if you've got a take in your area that you think, oh shit, this is going to come up, this is going to come up, and we need to start monitoring what's happening here, or we've got real concerns because now that factory's over there and we think they're doing this. Start monitoring, start recording, start your database collection, because if you turn up at a hearing with something really methodically based, that stuff was gold.
Just on the good submissions, let's not focus on the bad ones, but a good one is, it's real basics. I am representative of, we represent, whoever it is. Our area of interest is, those are really, really important, because when you go to make a decision, that's the stuff that we're recording. We think the issues are, and it's not, we don't like it, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And those issues are really important because this is how they affect us. And if it has just those 4 things, it just goes so far. That gets you in the door to the hearing, and then we can ask questions like, in your submission you said 1, 2, 3, 4. Have I got that right? And the effects of those are going to be this, and this. Have I understood that right? Yes, it was a good submission. It's going to get considered right through the whole process. So that's just some real basics, because I find a lot of submissions are quite long, but all the reasons why we don't like it. So-and-so talked to so-and-so and they said they didn't like it, and there's a petition, you get those almost like template submissions. We don't like it, we're opposed to it. To a commissioner, they're almost meaningless. That's like trying to voting for Donald Trump. Meaningless. But our submission with some substance to it is much stronger than 100 submissions just saying you're opposed to it.
And I suppose something as a commissioner, you know, I mean, feel free to jump in there, some of you commissioners, is how to ask good questions. As a commissioner, it's quite a skill in itself, asking good questions to bring out the kōrero that you need to hear. So reading behind the lines in the submission and sort of they're getting at this and saying that, are you getting at this? Are you saying this? Or without putting words in people's mouths, put some words in people's mouths and say, are you saying this? And sometimes, you know, they go, oh yeah, right. You know, and then that's really good, because sometimes you can see what the buyer's trying to say or the grower's trying to say, and yeah, so you just try and help what he's trying to say.
always think there's two parts to asking good questions. Sometimes you don't have a question, but you think there should be, and then you've got to think on your feet. I know they've got a question, but I can't think of it right now, and I have to read my notes, but I can't see it because I'm trying to look really important and intelligent. And you can do things like, would the chair like to ask some questions first, and I'll come back to you. Or I've actually got several questions. I'll let you guys go first, and then I'll come back to me. There's all delay tactics to sort of that particular. And then there's you can have some default questions are about so and so said such and such. Do you agree with it? So those are some ones that you can just fill up. So sometimes the question was in your head a minute ago and then it's gone, and so you need something to tide you over. But the what, the hows, the who's, those are all really good places to start.
To what degree can commissioners lead to questions?
That's a good question.
Depending on the chair.
Yeah, it depends on the leeway of the chair, really. How much leeway they'll give you. So, yeah, question. Whatever you say, stuff, oh, well, we lost them. Yeah.
I've been in a hearing for a plan, and I kind of knew what they were getting at, but they didn't say it. So I've asked them, was it your intention that this submission was looking to articulate this, and this in a policy? It looked kind of something like da-da-da-da-da, and I'm looking at the chair while I'm talking. And they go, yes, that's exactly right. So if we gave you, perhaps you just talked to the planner, we gave you 15 minutes, half an hour, just to spell that out, and we'll just double check that that's okay with you, and I'll chair again. You know, because what we're trying to do is make a good decision. And so we should try, as Māori commissioners, try everything we can to make a good decision. And sometimes, because it's quasi-judiciary, it's not, you know, you're not a court. So I always think let's push it to the government.
Because I think that's the power of the commissioner and the value, because often the translation in the questions, it's a good point, they can't make it. And if they can't make it, that point is lost, therefore the decision is weighted in another way. So really having a Māori commissioner to translate in that space seems to be
That's where that asking good questions is really critical in understanding the submission and really taking time out to sort of find what they're wanting to say or what they're trying to say is quite critical to the whole process. But then we had a couple of questions, Big P.
my question again?
My question was, who decides who can be a commission, who can be on the hearing? I'm asking that in the context of my iwi, Waikato, we got blocked. A whole lot of us went to the commissioners training, and I think from probably about 18 of us, there's only really been maybe one or two that get regular hearings.
Yeah, that's a great question.
And so we are now like tarnished. So our names are in the system. They won't use us because they know that we are affiliated to our tribe, and as a result, there's a lot of us who haven't never sat on a hearing for nearly 5-6 years. So in terms of so the question is two parts. The first one is council still deciding who sits on the hearings? And the second part would be more around how do our commissioners, Māori commissioners, help to change that psyche amongst that white middle class regime that they have going on here.
Get on council for starters. That would be my straight off the cuff answer. But you're right. I don't know how many people know that have done the training and they've got a different. And so they're 2 years are up to that. Why can't they trying to, certify? And fair enough. That's fair enough. It does. The buck stops with the council. They basically in their way they delegate the authority to make decisions to commissioners. So that's about raising that power. So I think there's a lot about having confidence in that person, the relationship you have with them. At the end of the day, it's about relationship.
It just depends on where the roadblock is. So if it's the councillors who are not delegating that to staff, then there needs to be a discussion chief to chief. But if they're pushing it down to the staff, you might have a planning manager who's got it in their head no conflict of interest, and so that's the block, and then someone's going to have to talk to them to open your eyes to the world. So just trying to find where the roadblock is, and
And just one final one, probably just more for the audience, is that just because they're Māori and they're commissioners doesn't necessarily mean that they are the best commissioner. Just need to acknowledge their whānau, because I've presented to at hearings to Māori commissioners, and I would at the very minimum expect a suite of type of questions to come my way, and I get none of them because I know those questions will help my submission, and they don't come. That's because the commissioner down there, he's a bloody potato. That's it in a nutshell. I know there's someone there that probably experienced that. But that's the reality. So I think we're going to campaign or advocate for Māori commissioners. You know, me whakaaro Māori I te tuatahi.
Yeah, that's right. You know, going through a similar process with one of the councils. It's like what Anton was talking about, you know, oh yes, I'm of this tribe. But you just don't see it in the letter, you don't see it in their CV, or else you sort of know them, or you know, I don't see you at that part, I don't see you on detail at that part, you know. So, so it's not just being professionally trained on my mind, but you actually live that lifestyle, you connect with your community, with your mind. That to me is what makes a good life commissioner. You know, I think you know what that's really important. Jeff, you had a question too?
Yeah, I'm curious for you and Anton. You have an approach, you walk into a commission hearing and you see a chair there, and might you change your strategy and your approach to the hearing dependent on who's sitting around the table with you, who's chairing with you, because you know you have some experience with them and they come from different points of view. Might that send you in a different direction? Does that happen?
yeah, I think to answer the question, you always have a choice as a commissioner whether you want to do it or not.
Yeah.
So from time to time, not often, but sometimes I'll be asked to go on a panel and I actually don't want to work with a chair or another person. I say I can't sit on.
Because he's a potato?
Because there's a conflict in values.
Very diplomatic.
You're a diplomatic. Go on straight. I have a conflict of interest. The other is that before any hearing, there's always a conversation with the other panel members. And you usually know other panel members, but sometimes you don't, because you might be getting a specialist, so we might be getting a landscape architect from Auckland that I haven't met before. This is their first hearing, and they come in. So my job, or Gina's job, is to help them as a commissioner, to be good as a panel. So sometimes we've got to help our panel members, especially with writing, because they might not be experienced in writing. And then sometimes there's the uncomfortable situation where either you're the chair or there's another chair, and you or the chair say something wrong, and you've got to sort it out because you're in front of everybody. That just happens. We're humans, we make mistakes. But the thing is to recognise it and address it straight away. Don't let it go on. So I've been in a comfortable situation where a chair has said something completely culturally inappropriate. I said, oh sorry chair, can we just have a minute? Go outside. This is what's happened. It caused the offence. Let's go back inside and sort it. Go back inside. Hey, there's been a breach. This is what it is. I apologise. Let's move on.
Halfway.
So but you've got to do it quick.
So it's
So
professional.
sometimes you've got to be fearless.
It's professional.
Basically. Good, Jeff.
At least you can lie in bed at night and maybe intact.
Oh, I've got a very good example. I won't say where it was in Plymouth that I was sitting. But it was a hearing to do with wahitapu. And the local Hapu Ngāti Rahiri were looking to include quite a large number of wahitapu sites in the district plan. And we had one submitter who turned up who was non-Māori and had a particular view of the world that was different to everybody else's. And where the law meets the laws is that every person who makes a submission has a right to be heard. So he turned up and started telling us as a panel the meanings of Māori words and perpetuating a lot of stereotypes about Māori. Racist. And so I'm sitting there and he's going, looking at the chair, I'm looking at him and I'm looking at the chair, and I leaned over the chair and said, can you stop this? And he didn't. I said, point of order, Mr. Chair. I'm sitting here feeling really uncomfortable that a submitter is perpetuating racist comments about Māori people, and it is unacceptable, and he should either stop and apologise or I'm leaving the room. So there's this really uncomfortable silence because commissioners aren't supposed to do that. So we got up and went out, and my chair, he was just stunned. What had happened is he was shocked, and he was like a stunned mullet. He was so shocked by this guy that he just kind of froze, and he was like, is this really happening? And he was waiting for me to say something because I'm the Māori commissioner. So he was glad that we stopped, and he came in and he just said, you have the right to speak. We're going to let you speak on the matters that you've raised in your submission. If you don't, you'll be asked to leave. So he carried on and he was asked to leave. And then we carried on again. So that's probably extreme.
Sounded like you needed a hike.
That does having very strong. We need to advocate in that mind space.
So it's wrong in every form.
Yeah.
That's wrong anywhere. Sometimes your chair's going, is he saying that?
Yeah, I had one hearing, the marina hearing in the, one of the sort of
At one time.
residents had issue with this marina being there, and was going on about this marina being there without a license occupied. But you could tell there was something else. He actually had an axe to grind about this marina. So I said, what's really going on? What's your real issue? Whatever your name is. And he looks at me and he says, how would you like it if somebody came and took your land without your permission?
Incredible.
You're asking the wrong question. And I cracked up laughing, but it was just like, we've got to sort of roll on because we've got about 10 minutes. So the role of Mātauranga Māori, I guess that is the role of Commissioner Māori and the submitter to provide those evidence. It's the same for what it was as before, and trying to provide that evidence and then providing us the avenue to sort of push that through, even if it's through implementing conditions that require the assessment of Mātauranga or the melding of Mātauranga into, say, the conditions of consent to monitoring and make it meaningful. I think there's really meaningful, having meaningful conditions, not just the old, if they find some boats, they will ring you up, real meaningful stuff. So having, say, some training involved, and so a person being sitting beside the engineer or sitting beside the planner and working through the assessment protocols or the monitoring protocols, and having some real meaningful outcomes. That to me, I think is really important, getting those conditions that actually empower the mana whenua to be involved. For example, the dredging at Tauranga, they have a monitor sitting on the dredging boats and watching what they're doing, what they see, that sort of stuff, I think. Because at the end of the day, you end up in a win-win. Because nobody's going to get what they want, 100%. That's just the reality of the real world. We're not going to get what we always want. That's just how it is. So we very pragmatic, practical about it, and knowing we're here for the long haul, those fellas will roll and go, but our kids will be here, so we'll just be here chipping away on it, and maybe not this generation, but the next generation, they're in charge. They're the ones making the planning decisions, they're sitting on the council too, and so it's always come back to governance, in my view. If you have issue with it, stand up, be elected, run for council, or be a commissioner, but it's all good standing outside and having a moan, but do something here, follow it up with some action, and I guess
Just two comments, just on the role of Mātauranga Māori. The first one is the courts. It's like a pendulum. I think at the moment you get some cases that are really strong recognition of Mātauranga Māori, and then you get other cases that are not. So I think the Opihi Whananga Kore case, the Tumu case, and the Matata case are really strong examples of recognition of cultural values of Mātauranga Māori. And then the other way, maybe the dredging case in Auckland, the regulatory plan are probably cases where Aotearoa Māori hasn't been recognised. So it's a bit of a swinging pendulum, but you should never underestimate the power of an expert witness who has an opinion and the power of a local person who's observed. For me, those are gold. If you've got an expert who's got a really good articulate opinion, where you've got local people who observe. I remember for the coaching reversion, and we had a fisherman who fished he put his boat out at Makatu boat ramp for 35 years. His observations were gold, and that meant any of the scientists who made really wonderful models, they were beautiful graphs, yellow, red lines, and they had the photography and it changes over time. That was Kore compared to him being down there and saying, this place has been settled this amount of time, this will happen in these different times. That was gold. We went with him over, and he didn't have a secondary school qualification, but his observations were gold over any of the scientists then. So don't underestimate the power of locals who know their environment.
So I've had a couple of decisions as well. See, no, I'm not putting my name next to that. And have written in the decision that I did not support the outcome of two particular things. One of them being the Kore Mahi and Tauranga Moana, only because the evidence was solid. The evidence that was given by the Panawhina was solid, and even the staff recommendations were supported it. Was just my mates wouldn't go with it. And that was the other thing. Sometimes, we, in plan changes and plan reviews and things like that, having more than one commissioner is really critical, because you end up getting down to that decision making and you get outvoted. And so then, your integrity requires you to, I'm dissent, and that's probably not a good thing as a commissioner, but again, too bad, you've got to just have your bottom line. So I remember asking one day, does it mean that you don't get asked to do hearings anymore if you do? And he goes, yeah, probably.
And sometimes you don't have to dissent against the whole decision. Sometimes you agree with the final decision, but you disagree about how they got there. And sometimes that's really important. And other times, if you're doing a plan change, there's lots of decisions. You might make 125 decisions, and you disagree with 5 of them. So, well, actually, I don't agree with this one. That's fine.
It's a big challenge for the commissioners to break out of the square box that this is the measure in which you make your decisions versus this is an open box of which you are able to float to listen to the intangible evidence as well as tangible evidence.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems to me to be the real dilemma.
Always attention.
Yeah, always attention.
Especially if you've got a very, very efficient administrator, breaks everything up into 10 and 20 and 30 minutes. I remember a hearing somewhere around this area with a lax trust somewhere around here. And they were the body that represents over 100 years of interest in some lakes around here somewhere. And they were given 10 minutes. And they'd asked for an hour. And I thought, wow, in the big scheme of things, planning hearings are going over months and months. 1 hour. Is that all? And so myself and the chair had a little stoush, both in front of everybody and out the back. And then we came back and I got outvoted. So luckily I know the law better than they do. And I said, well, actually I've got 15 questions that I haven't asked, and since we're not giving them the time, I'll put them in writing and allow them to respond formally, and then we'll reconvene the hearing. Oh, but we should have just given them an hour. So sometimes you've got to know your stuff, and use every lever that you can that's available to you. I haven't been asked to be a commissioner again with that. That's okay.
So we've only got 10 minutes, so I think, is there any questions from the floor that anybody wanting to ask? All right.
Sure. Just on that, what you were just talking about with the, so you guys are multi-commissioners, and sometimes you might make a dissenting decision and you might not get invited back. How do you feel that do you feel fully integrated into the whole range of different commissioners, like engineering commissioners and planning commissioners? Do they accept you as being equals, and do they have regard for your views? Do you see yourself as only being there because I know both of you have got skills outside of Mātauranga. Do you see that you're just pigeonholed into being there, the one that's to give them their advice just on the Māori stuff, or are you here as a
That's
full
correct.
commissioner?
They do try it. One of the reasons I got my master's was for that very reason. I've got to people now, you'll listen, and that's why I encourage Anu to go to those postgraduate levels, because that does get respect. Unfortunately, that's what gets respect in that world. So, it does happen. You just put your little weeps thingy and that's it. And,
So probably the follow-up question is, when will we see commissioners like you guys appointed as chairs?
I've got to get certification. You're also a chair.
Oh, you're chair.
Yeah, I'm a bit chicken just yet, but I'll do my
Just on that question, my answer was no, I haven't. But I was managed, so I'll always send my CV to the other commissioners if they don't know me, so they'll see all the areas of disciplines of knowledge, so they don't need to go there. And then I'll be asking them, hey, can you write my book? Not really much your own, but yeah. So we always share the workload. You don't give it all to the chair. So that's all part of the commission. You're getting paid a lot of money as a commissioner, and so you're expected to do the hard yards. You don't just sit there and listen to all that. It's nice. Someone else
It does concern me that being a Māori commissioner seems to be high risk, because you're going to delve into areas that are unpopular, quite a few times, and therefore you may not get appointed, and then others don't get appointed at all. So this sort of sense of popularity, what makes you popular, is a concern. And more importantly, is a concern where is the decision that can intersect to actually get those good people on, those Māori commissioners that can make a difference. Is that a decision that the councils make at the top? Therefore, we need to intersect and run interference in that space? Because this, to me, is not good. When we have to play a popularity game that actually could compromise the real value you bring.
Like, for example, what's happening in the Red Lakes Council, they're developing a pool of commissioners. So we've insisted that X amount of number of those are Māori commissioners, and so I sit on that RMA policy, and we'll be picking them. And again, it's about having the people in as councillors. And so Katoa Tarawa, for example, we have 2 people on each of the subcommittees of council who have voting rights, and they bring a lot of that. They bring a lot of value to the table in that respect. And they're really quite astute people. So they push from that level. We push from within the RMA committee level, and so it's just the same thing about making sure there's a policy in place rather than sort of relying on the goodwill of this councillor or that councillor. It's just so tedious.